Hi, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Carl Van Roon is a professional martial artist and performance coach who runs Van Roon Martial Arts School in Auckland, New Zealand. Here he likes to teach the reconciliation between traditional martial arts and modern innovation. Now, Carl is not only a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo, a 5th degree black belt in karate, he also fought in MMA and many other international competitions. Now in social media, you may see him training some of the greats of MMA, such as Israel Adesanya, Blood Diamond, etc. Today, we're lucky to have a chat with him, talking about different martial arts concepts and talking about growth of people in general. Please have a listen.
Man to man, combat hand to hand, hands locked, ready for the last stand, elbow drops, kicks fake bang. If I connect you, levitate, better settle mate, lights out, knocked out by the heavyweight.
Welcome to the show, Carl. Good to have you on.
Thank you so much, Toby. Really great to be here.
Now, man, I've been listening to some of your interviews and a lot of things that you say really resonate with me. So I'm quite excited to have you here to talk. One of the key things I want to talk about straight up is, you know, you're 10 years old, you start martial arts, and soon after you've got this passion that you want to keep going. And this wants to be your, lifetime journey. I find that very, very interesting. And it's also a common thread with some of the people that I've talked to in the past.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Like looking back on it, it's almost like people say that your, life finds you, like your path finds you. You don't choose it. It's almost like it was like a fate type of situation. So I consider myself very blessed, very lucky to be able to have found that at a young age, and also to have like embraced that and to have people around me that encouraged me and fostered my interest in it. Because I don't think I'm so much talented. I think I'm more just very interested and very obsessed. And I think that's what's led to some of my my success. Yeah. So yeah, it's a cool thing.
Actually, that's another common thread. So that's one thing. And then the next thing that you just mentioned by yourself is really common is when I talk to like Lolo Hamuli, a few other guys, people kind of think that you need to be talented to pursue something. But it's not so much about talent. It's about dedication. Persistence is like the biggest one, right? Like the case that Lolo talked about was Ray Sefo, how he came in every day. He was the first student to come, the last to leave. After he fought, he'd be back in the gym the next day. It's about persistence more than talent, right? And people don't always understand in life that you don't necessarily have to be the naturally best inclined for that sport or given exercise, whatever it is you're trying to do. But if you keep sticking at it, you're eventually going to get there, right?
100%, and I think that's something that's so amazing about this sport, about martial arts as a discipline in general. It's kind of like the underdog can prevail. You know what I mean? The less talented person can find a way to prevail. There's so many different ways that you can give yourself an edge. There's so much to learn, and it takes decades to get any good at it. So it's kind of like such a great, it's such a great tool for character development. You have to, and that's what I do most now is I'm coaching and empowering other people. And I see young people, and just like Lolo mentioned about Ray Sefo, I have students now that are just like that, and I look at where they've started and where they've ended up already. And I'm almost more excited about their careers and how much they can flourish, as opposed to, not that I haven't enjoyed what I've done as well, but again, I'm grateful to be able to extend that to people and give them that opportunity.
Man, talking about that and talking about your students, I've looked a bit through your Instagram and watching lots of your students hitting pads and doing different things, and looks very dynamic. And I like the way that you guys are, like, to me, it looks quite like a more realistic, serious martial art than some Taekwondo and karate styles are, because it's kind of addressing the white elephant in the room a bit. People have a negative sort of feeling about karate and Taekwondo at times, I think, because of that McDojo type thing. Can you talk on that a little bit, like about the way you teach Taekwondo or karate, or what your style is, and how yours relates back to real fighting rather than just being a flashy thing or something that's done in the air?
I grew up quite inspired by Bruce Lee and, the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, the book that he wrote about his concept of absorbing what's useful and discarding what's useless. And I like to think of what we do as a place where tradition meets innovation, you know, and where we honor the past, but we aren't held back by it, you know, and we're pursuing like constant innovation and growth and progress. And we, like anything, we have to evolve or die. And I think there's a lot of things that it's basically like, you know, if somebody pulled out an iPhone 1 and they said, oh, well, I just like to stick with the iPhone 1. Why? Do you know what I mean? Like, why aren't you evolving with it? Like, holding on to things for tradition's sake it's no use. But at the same account, it's like, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because I think of a lot of what people are looking for in terms of their martial arts training, it like depends on what your intentions are. Are you doing martial arts because you just want to do it for combat sports, or are you doing it for character development? A lot of these martial arts like karate, taekwondo, judo, aikido, they were created by martial arts masters in Asia who wanted to use them as tools to develop people's character, you know? And so what I want to do is I want to reconcile that idea with being combat sport or self-defense effective. You know what I mean? I think sometimes those things got taken too far and you end up down the McDojo route, and then you've got like very commercialized and you make a bunch of money, but you can't put your hand on your heart and feel like you're proud of what you're doing. You know what I mean? You're selling like snake oil to people, or vice versa. You go very far down the combat sport line and, you know, you beat people up and you win a lot of tournaments and you win a lot of fights and you win some titles, but you know what I mean? Do you have like the honor and the integrity behind what you're doing as a martial artist? I mean, I found a lot of MMA fighters actually do, which is one thing that has really attracted me to working with those guys, is seeing that they're humble, lifelong students of the game. I really, really like that. And I don't want to work with anybody who's not like that, you know? And I've seen a lot of, you know, just speaking freely, I've seen a lot of people in mixed martial arts who have a real, how can I put this? They demonstrate traditional values with their actions without walking around in a gi or a dobok and having high ranks and talking about it, but they show it. And I like that. You know what I mean? Because it's all about action, you know? Anyway, those are just thoughts off the top of my head, bro.
No, man, that's exactly the kind of thing I was wanting to talk about. And yeah, I see that 100%, especially with the guys that you work with from CKB, man. Like from going back to, you know, Balmoral Liga and these guys working through to the guys that are running CKB now, they've all got these traditional martial arts values without being entirely traditionally martial arts focused. And the kind of what you're talking about, that evolution, that, you know, you take what's useful, and some useful things in their eyes, obviously, is having a sort of moral code, right? And like guys like Eugene have that moral code, and you see it clearly the way he behaves and the way he talks about his fighters, that he has that real traditional sort of sense about the way he looks at the sport and the way he expects his athletes to be as people, as well as you know, that taking not taking away their physical side, but to actually take in that traditional martial arts ethos is quite interesting. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I really admire, you know, I admire how Eugene does that and how he fosters that. And yeah, so it's like a natural fit for me.
Do you think that do you think that's something that's missing a bit these days? Because like you said, you take what's useful and move on, and some of the useful things in martial arts, the traditional martial arts, are about that character building side. Do you think nowadays people are a bit more focused on just the, you know, the combat side and the you know, bashing things and being an effective fighting art, rather than keeping that little element within the schools?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, we live in an age where things are more instant than ever, right? You know, if I want food, I just go Uber Eats, it's done. If I want a car, Uber comes and picks me up immediately. If I want gratification, I have any number of entertainment sources at my disposal instantly. Social media, I'm never bored, I'm never hungry, I'm never having a struggle. So everything is like instant gratification. It's like, and I understand that people want to look for that and find the most efficient way to get better at what they're doing. But a lot of the things that were passed down through the martial arts, like for like thousands of years, they're about us learning to like slow down and be present and be humble and have integrity and be patient and be internally validating, don't require other people's praise, and venerate others before ourselves. And all of these things serve as a performance enhancing, I think, structure of values that keep you grounded, you know, keep you from losing the plot and mistaking external rewards as like the key thing. Because I think you can win as many titles as you want, and I think you can win a whole bunch of money, and you can win belts, and you can win medals. But if there isn't like a deeper purpose to what you're trying to do, or that you're trying to inspire other people, or that you're trying to add some good to the world, then I think it can be a bit empty, you know? And I think then that's what happens when people get to the top of their game and they're just a bit like, what else is there? So, you know, I think that those things in the traditional martial arts are still just as valid today. It's just we have to update some of the things that are old-fashioned and a bit redundant, you know?
And on the other hand too, do you think that, you know, when you talk about that old internal, external sort of martial arts aspects, I think from my perspective, I see a lot of that external physical side and not so much work on the internal sort of side. Do you agree with that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think at one point or another, you know, if you're testing yourself in a lot of ways, you'll be forced to look at yourself and forced to look at your internal processes and and as I do every day, you know what I mean? As all of us do every day. And I think hopefully if you're approaching combat sports or martial arts in a healthy way, then that becomes a vehicle for you to have to look at yourself and think, how can I be better in this? You know, how can I not blame other people for my shortcomings, or how can I grow more, or how can I contribute more? I think if you're doing it right and you're doing it with the right people, you don't have to get caught up in what it is and whether you're wearing this belt or this uniform or this style or that. You know, you can tell when people have good intentions, and you can tell when they're coming from the right place. That's what it's all about for me, man.
Actually, just popped into my head before when I was waiting for you. I was just thinking about that clip with Israel doing you demonstrated a spinning kick and then he did it and he just missed your head. And you can see, it's not like only a short clip, right? But you can see in that, just that little clip, you can see the humility and that of Israel, right? Like his reaction was like, oh, fuck, I nearly hit the Stifu or my friend or whatever. But you can see that humility just in that little brief facial expression, right?
Yeah, exactly. The thing about that clip was that I mean, it was actually kind of my fault because I did the spinning kick. And then the reason I stepped back was because I was trying to stay on the camera. You know what I mean? I was trying to stay in the shape of the camera. And so when I turned around and I was like, my bad. And he was like, no, my bad. It was because I was like, I shouldn't have stepped back into his way. It was like really obvious. Yeah, I really like, you know, I like working with Izzy. He's an amazing entertainer and performer, and he's you know, a generous person, and I think it's cool to see him getting out there and showing what he's capable of, and I like that he's willing to say what he thinks about things. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, man. Hey, I just got to look at something on my notes here because I heard something you said that kind of resonated with me again, and I just wanted to bring it into that. You mentioned about an analogy of like a spear, sword, and a dagger. Like the differences in using these as a weapon.
Yeah.
And I think it's I was on one of your interview.
Right.
But the interesting thing I find about that is, you know, like traditionally we think now of MMA as, you know, wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, and BJJ, right? This, that kind of thing. But I like to see that you're talking about the evolution and that, and you see someone like Izzy and the fact that they're looking for extra tools, and that's a tool that isn't always used. I mean, it is used by different fighters, of course, Michael Venom Page, Raymond Daniels, Machida, Stephen Thompson, but it's not as widely used as the others. And it's good to see someone trying to incorporate these extra skill set into their game. Could you talk a little bit about that analogy and how it works? Like, I mean, how your sort of skill set from that distance particularly can help someone?
Yeah, 100%. oh, you're really prepared. That's really cool. A lot of those guys would be the exact type of people that I would mention. Yeah, so, when I'm teaching students, I always like to look at just analogies and find different ways of getting the point across. Yeah, so, like if I think of like general kickboxing striking, then if we thought of like a long sword and we're swinging with a sword and maybe we have a shield as well, then there's almost like a non-verbal agreement that we'll stay in that range and we'll fight from that range. Or boxing. Okay, we'll both fight in closer range and we'll both use a dagger to try to shank each other, right? Or wrestling or jiu-jitsu. There's these non-verbal agreements about what weapons we use and what distance we use, In BJJ, if you sit down, the other guy's got to go down with you. Do you know what I mean? If we're fighting in kickboxing range, it's like kind of like, or Muay Thai, we kind of stand off and we keep pretty grounded and we kind of show that we've got like the mana to just check and absorb it and then bang back at the other guy. We don't use footwork. Then you have a big cage and it becomes like a circle or an octagon. And it's like, why are you not engaging on the terms that I thought we agreed to? It's like, no, you're here to fight. I'm here to fight. This is my concept of fighting. It fits in that box. And you have to fight that way. Come on. You know what I mean? And then, and you see that from both sides of the equation. But to go back to your original question about the spear, the sword, the dagger, etc., it's like, sure, it's important to have sword skills. It's important to have a shield. It's important to be able to pull a dagger out from close range. It's important to be able to grapple. But if you could have a spear, a long spear that I could stab you through the throat before you could even do anything, and you can't even get close, or furthermore, like a bow and arrow, and I shoot you in the face before you can do anything, why wouldn't I invest in that? You know what I mean? And there are weapons that can be adapted and are adapted, but some of that technology was kind of thrown out. It's almost like, okay, in the 70s and 80s, it was like, oh yeah, karate, Taekwondo, that's really, really interesting. Kickboxing became a bit more bigger, like 80s, 90s. Then you have this BJJ revolution leads to the rise of the UFC and everybody's just like, everything's crap. Let's just do BJJ. That's going to kill everything. Do you know what I mean? Then everybody learns BJJ. And then it's like, okay, now what? And then in the last 10 years in particular, there's this renaissance. People are crane kicking people, front kicking people in the face, side kicking, back kicking, spinning hook kicking, tornado kicking. And they're like realizing again, like, maybe those techniques could have worked, but they can only work if you have all the other weapons. So if you turn up with a spear and that's all you've got, and the bro gets inside and you've got nothing else, you're getting stabbed. You're getting stabbed multiple times. So yeah, I look at it that way. I love to look at things in principle form and reduce them to principles and disregard, if possible, the cultural baggage of it, and just say, in terms of first principles, what could that mean? Yeah. Some people might find it too academic and overly intellectualized, but that's just me being a bit of a geek, martial arts geek.
No, it's awesome, man. I don't know, to be honest, you say it and it resonates with me so much. I never thought of it from that angle though. It's quite cool, right? Like even I think of it even in basic terms, like I'm a hobbyist, but I've done stand-up competition and that, and I'm thinking about it when I do, I'm a stand-up guy who does BJJ. That's what I would class myself as. So when I'm doing BJJ, my movements when we're in that standing position don't quite fit into that agreed terms. It's quite funny, right? Like,
oh, right.
Yeah.
Are you the guy who just
I'm moving around a bit differently, like, because that's what you have.
They're like, why are you engaging? Yeah.
Exactly. I've got a bit more different range and a bit more like loose and moving. It just feels a bit. I always feel like that's been something that it just feels a bit awkward. And you're right, yeah. When you're training Muay Thai with a Muay Thai fighter, there's even an agreed rhythm, man. There's a rhythm that you follow.
Yeah.
Like no one breaks that rhythm. A lot of people don't break the rhythm, and that's what they have in MMA too now. It's like it is kind of agreed, isn't it? Like it's kind of agreed in a way that it is Muay Thai and wrestling and BJJ, and then the other things come in and be like, what are you doing, man? you're out of line here.
Exactly. So for example, when you look at like Thai boxing, stance is shorter. You've got your feet more under you. And then it's kind of like, I kind of trade with you, you throw back at me, I throw back at you, you throw back at me, I throw back at you. We're going to go, ooh wee, back and forward. But then like when you put that into a mixed martial arts context and you want to stuff a takedown and you start getting your stance a little bit wider so that you're controlling the distance more, you stop trying to check kicks. You stop standing exactly in range. your distancing becomes your distance and your footwork becomes more boxing like, or more karate like, or more Taekwondo or point fighting like. If you've got a background like me, you see that. But if you've got an amateur boxing background, you think, oh, that's more like an amateur boxing footwork. And then people stop trying to check kicks and stand on one leg. They start to make them miss or stuff them or catch them. And so suddenly the dynamic changes. And then you start to look back at like karate footwork in different circumstances. And you look at Conor McGregor's footwork, you know, and you start to think like, hang on a second. That's all comes back to those agreed rules of engagement that are unwritten rules that are passed down culturally. When you put one art here and you put one art here and you put one art here and you put one art here. What's really interesting is you put these two chemicals together. The two parts are not just they could have a chemical reaction, and then they interact in a way that means that you have to transform this, and it's no longer just this and just that. It's a new thing. So shoot boxing is different to just boxing or just wrestling with shots. You know, kickboxing with wrestling is different to just boxing with wrestling. Jiu-jitsu with wrestling is different to just wrestling or just jiu-jitsu. You know, but then if you combine them all, there's so many chemical interactions, and there's so many ways that if a person's only familiar with certain concepts and they've really rigidly stuck to them, they've gone, hang on, this is the way that it has to be done. I think there's ways to exploit that. You know what I mean? And things go in cycles. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers by any means. I'm still a student of all the arts. But it's exciting to be able to explore that and contribute to that and see that in action.
For sure. I mean, there's been such an evolution in MMA. Like people say, it's one of the fastest growing and evolving sports. And that would probably be the next thing, don't you think? That people were just trying to throw in something that's out of the ordinary, right? Because you see even in simple, someone can throw in a simple kick. And if someone's only been training Muay Thai and wrestling and BJJ, they can be thrown off completely, like a stomp kick to the knee, and just someone just continually throwing that can shut down a whole person's game if they don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. So you can incorporate things that are out of the ordinary and really throw your opponent off.
That's right. And doesn't always have to be that fancy. Like you said, an oblique kick to the leg, a low side kick. I mean, the Gracies were doing that in like the 90s, like oblique kicking people's knees so that they would step their feet back and then they shoot like a double and just dominate them on the ground. It's a perfect example of a technique that is used in arts like Wing Chun Kung Fu, karate, Taekwondo, side kicking. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. It's fascinating to see.
And man, talking about competition and fighting, you've been in many, many competitions. I can see that you've got heaps of different titles in ITF 2 times grand champ, special technique champ, medal in ITF 80 kilos, 4-time world champ in traditional sparring, many different things. You've competed in not only like MMA, you've completed a lot of the traditional ones as well. I'm interested in knowing like the different like benefits of some of the different competition. Like you even done board breaking, things like that, right? And what are the benefits in some of those different sort of competitions that people might not really be aware of?
Yeah, I think what happens. I think when you're talking about karate or Taekwondo, I think one of the things that is most beneficial is distance management. If you're talking about the application to mixed martial arts, I think it's distance management. It's what made Machida effective when he first came on the scene, you know? It's what makes somebody like Michael Venom Page, as unorthodox as he is, frustrating for people. It's what makes Raymond Daniels so effective. It's what made Wonderboy so effective. I mean, outside of that Superman punch that he got caught by Pettis, when does he get hit? He hardly gets hit, you know? It's because of distance management from that background. So I think that's a real benefit from it. I think you have to complement that with all of your other training, as you said. But I think that's a real benefit. As for all the other sort of disciplines like board breaking or various choreographed routines, you know, there's a couple of different ways I could answer. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to martial art. Sometimes people forget that this is martial art. Like it's an expression of, it could be like dance. Like it doesn't have to all be about like the most brutal, violent, direct expression of combat between two people. there's so many different ways to explore martial arts and enjoy that. And, you know, me personally, might not be for everybody, but I enjoy expressing that in terms of like film and TV or fight choreography, or in terms of seeing what the human body is capable of. Special technique is about jumping kicks and breaking boards at the top, spinning kicking or jumping kicking, kind of like high jump, but you're breaking boards with your feet. Power breaking in Taekwondo sense is like seeing how many boards you can break with one shot. Some people, they just want to test themselves and they want to test their own, again, it's that internal validation, their own internal challenge. Like, holy shit, there's like 5-6 inches of wood in front of me. Can I put my fist through that, or will I break my hand? So, you know, it's like it's their own challenge. As to whether that's really valuable for mixed martial arts, I mean, I think that's in the eye of the beholder. There's probably much more efficient ways to prepare yourself for a fight, but those are things that I've enjoyed exploring nonetheless.
And for you and your students, I'd imagine that you think there are quite a bit of benefits in competition, right? From a probably a confidence building perspective, from a testing yourself sort of perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly, mate. I might be getting this wrong, but I think that competition comes from the word to search together, like together, petition, search. So I always like go back to that. If we're competing, you're my adversary, but we're both searching for something. We're both searching for like self-improvement, you know? I struggle to see eye to eye with people that say that, you know, you're belittling the true spirit of martial arts if you're competing. I think that's absolutely nonsense. Like, if you don't, what's the closest way that we can test ourselves outside of safe but challenging competition? What else is there? You know, you'll never have to reach inside yourself and go to a darker place than if somebody else is up against you, and you'll learn so much more. It's easy to like be, you know, feel like you're an exceptional martial artist when you're alone on your mat and you're perfectly like dry and safe and warm dojo or dojang with people that you're familiar with. But when you actually test yourself in competition, it's like you've got to go to some dark places to get it done. Yeah, and I think that shows you, that makes it so much more purposeful, so much more meaningful to have competition. So yeah, I think it's absolutely essential. My daughters, for example, both my daughters train. They're 9 and 5 years old. I don't care if they become champions or not. I really don't care about that. But I do care that they challenge themselves and go through some struggle so they have something to draw on for whatever challenges they want to approach in their life. That's my perspective.
I 100% agree. It goes back to the adage of, growth through being put in uncomfortable positions, right? And there's nothing more uncomfortable, man. For your average person, if I look at my own experience, stepping up in front of 1,000 people and going out of the ring to face someone that's fought or trained as well like you, it's terrifying, man. And after you get through it, it's like you've had a massive achievement. And if people haven't been under that sort of pressure, they don't quite understand. And 100% it's led to successes in my life through that are not related to fighting in the least, just by giving you something to work against adversity and, you know, push through things and challenges, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where did you fight? What did you do?
I fought kickboxing. I'm in my late 40s, so back then in New South Wales, Australia, there was only kickboxing really. So I fought kickboxing, full contact kickboxing. I fought some Muay Thai and also competed in BJJ as well, but not at a high level, at a hobbyist level, you know. More than 10 fights in stand up and, you know, a few in BJJ, but yeah, that's my background. Not too amazing, but it's just enough to sort of lend itself to understanding more. And I've been a hobbyist my whole life pretty much. Yeah.
Nice. I wouldn't have put you in your late 40s. I don't realize
I've got a hat on. Take it off. I don't know how.
You're kind of like John Wayne Parr's sort of generation.
Yeah, very much so, man. Followed all those guys. Yeah. Exactly, very similar age. Although he's been fighting up until now. I gave it up 10 years ago or so in fighting anyway.
He's amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, true, man. I hope he's all right once he finishes, because that's something that's difficult for people to handle too, is you've been at the top, you know, all the recognition, people wanting to see you fight, you know, you're the man, and then suddenly you're not anymore. It must be very hard on the ego, yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I'm 38 years old now, you know, and I started doing martial arts when I was 10. Like, it's very difficult when your identity is all tied up. And I think what's been beneficial for me is that I'm really fortunate that I have different ways of expressing that. Like, I can find value within myself in terms of the value I provide other people as a coach, or I can apply it in different ways by exploring different arts or working in film and TV or crossing over. I think what's really tricky is if, like you said, you were a champion and you were venerated and you were celebrated, and then I don't know, you get injured or you're just not the man anymore, or it just doesn't work out, or you have a few tough losses, and then there's no other diversity. Like, I can imagine that would be really tough. But in some ways, I have been through some of what you're saying, myself.
Actually, talking about that, I watched you've only had one MMA fight, is it?
That's correct. Yeah.
I watched your MMA fight, man. I can see a little bit of the first fight jitters for MMA, right? You just feel it. It must have been a very, very tough experience. I mean, there's nothing more raw really than an MMA competition, right? In my feelings anyway, it's like very, very close to a real sort of fight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like those little gloves, and that's it. You know what I mean? And I think what got me going about it was the fight was at Sky City Casino in Auckland, just up the road here. So I'm at my gym, and this is my neighborhood. This is like where I grew up.
So it's everyone there, right?
That's right. Yeah. So there's many students there, and I had thought about, doing it for quite a long time, and I had been focusing a lot on coaching my students. And I was like, if I don't do this now, I don't start to try to fight MMA now, I might lose the opportunity. And I have to do this regardless of whether I win or lose, and I have to show my students that you have to be willing to do that. Even if, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone and, you've already achieved other things, and it's not about that, it's about what you can do today. So yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. Yeah, I was also working on a TV series at the same time. If the new
might turn up all beaten up, right? Like you did well.
What it was. No, that's exactly what it was. Just wipe this camera. That's exactly what it was. I was working on Amazon's Lord of the Rings. It's like the Rings of Power, and we started shooting at almost exactly the same time that I committed to the MMA fight. And like if I had gotten really damaged, that could have really, really compromised or got me, in trouble.
Snap the shin or something. Jesus.
Yeah, but like touch wood, it all turned out fine. You know what I mean? So yeah. So there was a few different factors at play.
That's it, man. Hey, one little point that I had that I wanted to talk about, which we kind of talked about before, a tiny bit before we turned the record on. In your career, you've had a chance to travel a lot around the world, and it's something that's kind of common again across a few people I've talked to. Dan Hooker, as an example, traveled a lot, and he kind of says that's a big part of his love for fighting and combat sports, that he's had a chance to travel around. What have you taken from your travels? You've been to North, South Korea, Europe, Japan, Asia, China, Korea. You lived in Korea, you mentioned. What did you take from those sort of travels?
Yeah, I just love it so much. My wife and I both love traveling, and I think that's one thing that brought us together. She's been an amazing support to me, and our daughters joined us like from when they were like 6 months old, 5 months old. They'd be like sitting in the stands at a world championships. Yeah, I mean, in terms of travel, it's I think it's just opened my mind so much to different ways of life. I mean, I think you've probably done a lot of travel yourself, and just it's humbled me to see how many people around the world have less than me. It's such a cliche, but they're still so happy and they're still vibrant, and seeing where real joy comes from and seeing where purpose comes from, and opening your eyes to your own, what we talked about, like non-verbal agreements about how things are done culturally in fighting sports. It's the same with like how we live, you know, you go to a different country and it's like, oh, they do it completely differently and it works so well. Why do we even do that? You know, like I see that everywhere. I see that in Asia or the Middle East or North or South America. Come back home and I think that's a better way. I wish we could introduce that here, you know?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's humbling and expands my mind. And I love to see culture and music and art. And I think it's what life's about, you know, just for me personally. So
it's amazing actually, because what you're saying is exactly something that I say, which is, you know, or in a different way. Like, so I'm from kind of small town Australia, you know, kind of Anglo-Saxon area. I never thought about going overseas and had a job offer and came over here. And I've been over here for a long time, but I arrived here thinking that I knew everything about the way people think and everything. I never even considered a concept that people think about things differently and do things differently and approach problems differently. And then you learn, oh my God, people think completely differently in another country. Like Chinese people think completely differently about how to do things than you. And you go, one of them put it in this way once to my friend. My friend wanted to do something and he said, when you approach a problem like this, you go straight through it. We go to it and we circle around. Like, this is how a guy explained it to him, how you're like thinking differently. And I'm like, yeah, we just think completely differently. And it takes time to learn. And then exactly what you said, there's benefits. Like the Chinese do some things in amazing ways. Like they really work on relationships. They really like work together. And in Australia and probably New Zealand as well, where individualists, we just think about our own thing and we do everything ourselves, and they're collectivists. They work so differently and you can learn something from that. There are some things that I would say they don't do well as individualists and Westerners, but then some things are amazing. And you like it, just like your martial arts, you take what is, you know, good and useful and use it, and the rest you throw away, and then you grow from it, right?
Yeah. The collectivism thing. That's a really important point, actually. And I think that really applies also to like good martial arts gyms, you know, collectivism. Even though there's these elite people and these standout performers, it's like the collective gets behind it and the collective still comes before the individual. And if the collective is served well, then the individual will always be supported. You know, like that's more of like an sort of an Asian cultural approach, I think, or even Pacific Island, but definitely probably not like Western or Anglo-Saxon, as you said, right?
Yeah.
And then you said about China, also about the guanxi, right? Is that what you mean by that? Like the building relations?
Basically it. That's the same concept but just in general, like if like a clear example of just the differences in thinking is like it's just an example that stands out to me. If you're in Australia and you go to a seminar and someone, this is probably not really related, but you go to a seminar and someone's talking up on the stage and about whatever, and then they finish it and they say any questions, everyone stands up and wants to talk about themselves. They're like, oh, I'm Toby, I'm a, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I think this, and I've done this, and I do this. And you go to those ones and they ask anyone how many questions, everyone's completely silent. Like it's just a weird difference, man. Everyone wants to show off and stand out as an individualist, and the collectivists don't want to stand out. They want to be in the crowd. They don't want to stand out, and they don't like it when you try to stand out from the crowd. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some very interesting things anyway. And you mentioned about language as well, which is something that I also didn't know, is like language breaks barriers completely. Like you go somewhere, recommend to anyone that has a listen to this, if you go anywhere, just learn some of the language because they really appreciate it. And once you learn a reasonable amount of that language, you can actually like understand the way they think better as well, which you don't really understand until you do it, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like, so different. There's so much nuance to it, and it immediately breaks down the us versus them sort of dynamic, doesn't it?
And you got to drop the ego too, right? Because it's not easy to learn language, especially something that's tonal. And then so once you do learn that little bit, they'll laugh at you a lot. They still laugh at me. My wife still laughs at me when I say things. Oh, you just said this or whatever. But yeah, you just keep going and you don't worry about it when you make a mistake, and you get better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So does your wife speak Cantonese or Mandarin? Or?
She speaks both, yeah, but her hometown language is Cantonese.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, most people in China, from where we are, I'm in the southern side of China, so everyone speaks, the natural language here is Cantonese, but everyone accepts that Mandarin is the primary language in China, so everyone's speaking it. Yeah, even the people in Macau can speak it a little bit badly, but they can speak it to an extent. Yeah. Yeah. Now, Cam, we're getting to the end of the time. I have 10 quick questions I've been asking a lot of people lately, if you don't mind. Just some short answers from you would be good, and then I'll let you go.
Sure. Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Just quick answers, because I know you can go a long time. I can feel you like talking. So,
yeah.
The first one is like tips for training and motivation for your general person, because you're obviously, in the gym every day. How do you motivate yourself? How you can help someone to understand how to motivate themselves?
I think you just need to get really, really clear about what your why is, why you're doing it. When you have a long-term vision for yourself that gets you excited, you'll naturally want to get out of bed and get after it. If you're just doing it for a quick short-term thing, but it's not about a whole new identity and vision for yourself, it's difficult to make that self-sustainable. Get really clear about why you're doing it. Get really clear about an exciting vision for yourself, and keep revisiting that, and you'll maintain that inner fire.
Perfect. Tips for true health. Like, health isn't always just about the body, right? What's your tips for overall sort of true health?
Yeah. I feel like I'm still trying to get that myself, to be honest. I was going to say balance, but then it's like, nah, I don't really have balance. I just go hard after everything, and then try to figure it out as I go. True health. I think one thing that's really important is just like really putting in time with the relationships with the people that really matter to you, and making sure that they're looked after. And if they're looked after, then they look after you. We all need support from each other. I think what you said about that collectivist thing is really essential. I'm taking time to try to make sure that the people in my life that really matter to me are looked after, and they know that I love them and care about them.
Cool. Jumping on the other side of the spectrum, best street fight story?
Best street fight story. I don't think I've ever, I've never been in a street fight, man. I've never been in a street fight.
Cool. So in your gym, what would you say would be your best street fight technique that you would teach if someone is in a fight?
To gap it, to run.
Yeah, no, I expected that from more people actually, but some people say it, but not everyone. Yeah. If you could only choose one martial art to train, what would it be? If you could only choose one, you can't cross over.
Can I can I give a bullshit answer like a Jeet Kune Do, which is like, nah, but that's kind of cheating, eh? One martial art. Oh, well, honestly, I would say Jeet Kune Do. If Jeet Kune Do counts as a martial art, but that's more of a philosophy anyway. It's the absorb what's useful and reject what's useless. But that's I've kind of sidestepped your question. But if I had to, I'd say that, Bruce Lee's work on Jeet Kune Do kind of points out the way that martial arts developed in the last 40 years. So I'm going to say
that's cool. That's cool. Quickly, the true value of learning martial arts or MMA?
It's learning about how to overcome yourself, overcome your lesser self. And sometimes that just happens to happen and coincide with overcoming other people, but you learn that in the end, you're really just trying to overcome yourself.
Cool. A couple of stupid questions to finish. Someone gives you an elephant, you can't sell it or give it away. What do you do with it?
You can't sell it or give it away. I'll give my daughters some rides around on the elephant. My wife's actual favorite animal is an elephant, so we keep it as a pet, and I'm sure she'd love that. We'd probably have to figure out a way to house it though.
Compare yourself to an animal. What would it be and why?
What would it be and why? Compare yourself to an animal. I think I might be like a dog. I think I'm like really, to be honest, I think I'm like quite open and maybe a bit naive and forgiving, or like, maybe a bit naive, a bit like kind of stupid but loyal sometimes about certain things. Yeah, maybe a dog, maybe.
That's cool. Describe the purpose of MMA to someone from another planet.
I think mixed martial arts is a way that I think it's a way that modern primates, Homo sapiens, they it's a vehicle by which Homo sapiens can test themselves and their primitive urges without resorting to war or violence in an unhealthy way. So it's like a means by which we can channel our primitive urges for like violence and conflict and dominance, but paradoxically improve ourselves and our character in the process if we do it in the right way.
Cool. That's the most academic kind of sounding answer I've had so far. Kind of cool. Last one is
I told you I was a geek, bro.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized Francis Ngannou's or 1 10-foot tall-sized Francis Ngannou?
Duck-sized, did you say?
Yeah, 100 duck-sized Francis Ngannou or 1 10-foot tall.
Is this just one-on-one? It's just me versus
you versus 100 or you versus 1?
What's the battlefield area?
I would say a football field. I don't know.
Oh, okay, football field. Okay. I think if it's a football field, then I reckon I'd take the 100 small ones, because I reckon I could just run away from them. You'd be able to move past them and you just boot them one by one. But the big one, I don't know how you'd beat them. I can't see a way. I'd just boot every single one of those 100 little Francis Ngannou's in the face.
Sounds good. Blood diamond, can you just get it over and done with and take the 10-foot?
Big one.
Anyway. Hey, bro, just to finish up, just wanted to get, I heard you talking on following passions, kind of along those lines that people say about you, do something you love, you never work a day in your life, this sort of thing. I just wanted you a little quick statement on people following passions, if you don't mind.
Yeah, 100%. I really think it's like, you've only got one life to live, or as far as we know, at least in this realm, whatever you want to think about religiously or spiritually. And I think from my experience, I took quite a big punt on putting most of my eggs into sort of one basket and really pursuing my own passion. And I've loved the entire process of it, whether I was dirt poor, had no money and had no resources and had no students and was losing everything and wasn't winning, to up to now where I've got a successful business and things are going great. But if I wasn't willing to take the risk and just pursue my passions and go after it, I'd be miserable even if I settled to do something typical or something safe or something secure. So it's like, I'd rather be happy and struggling, but have purpose and know that I'm pursuing that which I'm passionate about and that which I feel like I can make a contribution in the world, than just settle for something secure and safe and then think, when I finish my life, what was the point of all that? Yeah,
it's perfect, bro. All right, man. I'm very happy to have talked to you, man. I feel like I said, a lot of things you talk about resonate with me, man. So yeah, thanks so much for giving me the time, and maybe in the future I'll catch you again for a chat.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toby. Really appreciate it.